Before we begin, viewer discretion is strongly advised. The following content is intended for educational and entertainment purposes only. This script presents a fictionalized courtroom testimony from the trial of Sean Diddy, as reported by Inner City Press. The atmosphere in the courtroom was tense as an unexpected witness took the stand, a woman no one had anticipated but who had witnessed everything. She wasn't a celebrity or a former flame, rather, she was Diddy's former maid, having cleaned up after his most private parties while signing strict NDAs to maintain silence. Now, her silence was broken as she spoke about burned contracts, red-stained bed sheets, and eerie objects tossed into trash bins. The witness, a former housekeeper known only as Housekeeper X, entered the courtroom dressed in all black, a simple dress with no makeup and her hair tied back. Her demeanor suggested she didn't seek attention, yet the gravity of her presence was palpable. As she sat in the witness chair, the atmosphere shifted. Cameras were not allowed, but reporters noted how Diddy leaned back in his seat, arms crossed, sunglasses still on, until she began to speak. She introduced herself softly, revealing that she had worked for Diddy between 2014 and 2020 under a private contract that emphasized discretion and confidentiality. Her role was far removed from the glitz of the parties. She was the one tasked with cleaning up the aftermath, often left alone to deal with the remnants of wild events long after everyone else had gone home or passed out. "I saw a lot," she said, glancing quickly toward the defense table. "I didn't understand most of it at the time. I just did my job." But one particular Monday morning marked a turning point. After what she described as one of the worst after-parties she had ever cleaned, something happened that would change everything. She arrived at the Beverly Hills estate at 6:15 a.m., greeted by an unusual silence. Typically, there would be music playing or a chef preparing breakfast, but this morning, the house felt eerily quiet. As she began her routine, starting with trash removal, she noticed a peculiar smell emanating from one of the burned cans. It was a mix of plastic smoke and something sharp, which piqued her curiosity. Inside, among the ashes, she found half-melted photo frames and a scorched manila folder, along with a fragment of a passport photo. "I wasn't supposed to look," she admitted, but something about the situation felt wrong. As she continued sorting through the trash, the judge leaned forward, intrigued. The prosecutor then raised a copy of the very photo fragment she had discovered. Although charred and blurred, the image revealed the face of a teenage girl, her smile frozen in time. The jury studied it silently, their expressions a mix of shock and disbelief. Diddy closed his eyes and rubbed his temples, visibly shaken by the revelation. What had transpired behind closed doors was not merely disturbing, it was damning. For the first time, the world caught a glimpse of a version of Diddy he had fought so hard to keep hidden. This testimony could potentially change everything, and as the courtroom settled, the air thickened with anticipation and tension. Housekeeper X continued her testimony, describing the chaotic aftermath of Diddy's lavish parties. While she rarely witnessed the main events, those glittering gatherings filled with celebrities, flashing lights, booming speakers, and endless drinking, she was intimately familiar with what followed. These after-parties were a different beast altogether, where the revelry turned darker and more exclusive. The lights dimmed, security tightened, and guests transformed. Some looked nervous, others appeared very young, creating an unsettling contrast to the vibrant energy of the initial festivities. Her cleaning instructions during these nights were specific and clear: do not enter the East Wing bedrooms, avoid cleaning the downstairs den, and only take trash from designated zones. However, she admitted to violating these rules more than once, not out of rebellion but out of fear. On one occasion, while cleaning the guest bathroom, she stumbled upon a blood-stained towel, tightly rolled and jammed behind the toilet. The sight sent a chill down her spine. She called security, who retrieved it without a word, leaving her with lingering questions and a sense of unease. Another night, she noticed strange marks on the hardwood floor, deep scratches that suggested something heavy had been dragged across it. Each discovery added to a growing sense of dread, making her question the safety of those involved. The worst part of her experience, however, was the ritual table she described. It was a long wooden dining table covered in melted candle wax, burnt photographs, broken glass, feathers, and, most disturbingly, what looked like dried blood. I wasn't told to clean it, she explained, but I had to walk past it every morning. No one ever touched it, it just sat there for days. One day it would vanish completely, only to reappear the next week, as if it were part of some twisted cycle. The judge asked her if she had reported this to anyone, and she shook her head. I had signed so many papers, I didn't want to end up like the others who just disappeared. The courtroom fell silent again, the weight of her words hanging heavily in the air. The mention of disappeared resonated deeply, hinting at a dark reality that many might have preferred to ignore. What she found in the trash was not a one-time occurrence, it became a pattern. Every time there was an after event, the same items would reappear like clockwork: charred paper, torn receipts, half-burned Polaroids, and disturbingly, more photos of people she didn't recognize. One night, she came across an envelope with a red stamp that read. She picked it up inside. Inside were 5 torn-up contracts with blacked-out names and pages that mentioned agreements of participation and full compliance. Each was stained, folded, and smelled like alcohol and smoke. At the bottom of the pile was a $100 bill, torn straight down the center. She brought these fragments home, scared but unable to ignore what she had seen. For weeks, she kept them in a small lockbox under her bed, a secret she couldn't bear to share. It wasn't until a month later, while at a grocery store, that the full horror clicked into place. On the community board near the front entrance was a missing persons flyer for a teenage girl named Malia, last seen at a yacht party in 2016. Her face was nearly identical to the passport photo she had found in the trash weeks earlier. The resemblance struck her like lightning, and she froze, dropping her groceries before walking out of the store. I couldn't breathe, she told the jury, it felt like my chest collapsed. When she got home, she retrieved the burnt photo and compared it again. The same eyebrows, the same dimples, the same slight freckle near the left cheek. This was no coincidence. In a moment of desperation, she emailed the photo anonymously to a tip line, hoping for some response. Instead, she felt watched. Her phone began acting strangely, and someone parked across from her house for hours, making her feel unsafe. Eventually, she moved apartments, changed numbers, and quit the job, unable to carry the burden any longer. I never wanted to be part of any of this, she concluded, but I couldn't carry it anymore, not after Kim died, not after Malia went missing, not after what I saw in the trash. The courtroom was stunned, the defense attorneys remaining silent, as if the air itself had shifted. The prosecution placed a sealed evidence bag on the table, revealing a single sheet of scorched paper with edges blackened and some text unreadable, yet at its center were words that burned into memory: guest entry protocol, followed by a list of names or at least aliases. Housekeeper X stared at it, her voice trembling slightly, but she pressed on, knowing that her testimony was only beginning to unravel the truth behind the shadows of Diddy's world. As Housekeeper X continued her testimony, she recounted a chilling incident that further deepened the mystery surrounding Diddy's secretive activities. There was a door in the West Wing hallway, always locked and always guarded, that no staff were permitted to enter. One afternoon, while delivering dry cleaning to a guest suite, she found the door slightly ajar, tempting her to peek inside. Curiosity overtook caution as she stepped into the soundproof room, revealing shelves lined with labeled mini DV tapes and memory cards neatly stored in rows. Some were marked with first names, others with dates, but many were simply labeled with numbers. In that moment, she realized she had stumbled upon something far more sinister than mere memorabilia. Before she could fully grasp the implications of her discovery, a man appeared behind her, his hand already reaching for his waistband. "Turn around," he commanded, his tone leaving no room for negotiation. Heart racing, she complied, nodding and backing away without a word. From that day forward, she was no longer scheduled on days following Diddy's most secretive events. Her role was reassigned, she was only to clean before parties, never after. It was as if she had been boxed out, silenced, and eventually let go with a severance package and a warning: if I ever spoke about anything I saw, I'd disappear too. This ultimatum weighed heavily on her conscience. The thought of disappearing like the others haunted her, reinforcing the idea that silence was not just a choice but a necessity for survival. As she reflected on her experiences, the realization dawned that she had become an unwilling participant in a system designed to suppress the truth. The implications of her testimony extended beyond the courtroom. They echoed through the lives of those who had vanished, including Kim Porter, whose tragic death had cast a shadow over Diddy's life. Kim Porter, the mother of 3 of Diddy's children, was found unresponsive in her home in November 2018, officially attributed to sudden lobar pneumonia. Yet, friends recalled her final days as strange and paranoid, with Kim expressing fears that something was amiss. Friends shared that she had reportedly told family members, "If anything happens to me, don't believe it was an accident." Housekeeper X remembered the weeks leading up to Kim's death vividly. Diddy had stopped throwing parties for a while, appearing nervous and anxious. During this time, she found a manila folder labeled "Kfin vinyl" in the kitchen trash, though she did not open it. The atmosphere in the mansion felt charged with tension, and the changes in Diddy's behavior hinted at deeper issues lurking beneath the surface. One particularly haunting memory was a voicemail from Kim that had come through on the house line. It was short and panic-filled, with Kim crying and pleading, "They know I'm going to talk. I just don't want to die for it." The message was deleted within minutes by another staff member, but the impact lingered in housekeeper X's mind. The connection between Kim's fate and the events she witnessed in the mansion was becoming increasingly apparent, weaving a complex narrative that linked the 2 women's lives in a way that could not be ignored. As the courtroom absorbed the gravity of her words, the judge turned to the jury, emphasizing that the information presented would not be treated as conclusive but rather as part of a broader narrative. The defense objected, but the effect of housekeeper X's testimony had already taken root, shifting the focus from mere misconduct to a potential investigation into the circumstances surrounding Kim's death. The threads of the story began to intertwine, suggesting that the tragedy of Kim Porter was not an isolated event but rather a piece of a larger puzzle that needed to be solved. The final part of housekeeper X's testimony focused on the very thing that started it all, the trash. For years, it had been ignored, disposed of, burned, and forgotten, yet now every torn envelope, every scorched paper, and every discarded photograph had come back to haunt the man who believed his secrets were safe. She presented a final piece of evidence, a sealed plastic bag containing burned Polaroids, partially melted memory cards, and handwritten notes with names and dates. "I didn't understand what it meant at the time," she said, "but now I know it was insurance." The prosecution requested that the contents be submitted into evidence under strict protective custody, and the judge approved. The courtroom was abuzz with tension as the implications of her findings sank in. The final moments of her testimony marked a pivotal shift in the trial, setting the stage for a deeper exploration of the truths buried within the shadows of Diddy's empire. As the stakes rose, the audience was left to grapple with the unsettling reality that sometimes the most profound revelations come from the most unexpected sources. The truth, it seemed, was not only hidden in the depths of a vault room but also in the hearts of those who dared to speak out against the darkness. As the courtroom reconvened, the atmosphere was electric with anticipation. Diddy's absence loomed large, leaving a palpable void that seemed to amplify the gravity of the proceedings. The judge called for an emergency recess, and the murmurs of confusion and speculation rippled through the gallery. Reporters outside the courthouse were stunned, scrambling to capture the unfolding drama. The rumors swirled. Was Diddy experiencing a mental breakdown? Had he fled the scene? Or was this a calculated move to regain control of the narrative? When the court finally reconvened 2 hours later, Diddy's seat remained empty, a stark reminder of the power dynamics at play. The tension in the room was palpable, and the jurors exchanged glances, each trying to decipher the significance of his absence. The prosecution, undeterred, continued to build their case, presenting the evidence gathered from housekeeper X's testimony. The sealed evidence bag containing the burned Polaroids and memory cards was now a focal point, symbolizing the fragility of the secrets that had long been buried. Meanwhile, the media frenzy outside the courthouse reached a fever pitch. Social media exploded with hashtags and discussions, as viewers dissected every detail of the trial. The Maid's testimony had cracked the door open, allowing the public to peer into the dark corners of Diddy's world. News outlets raced to report on the developments, with headlines screaming about the alleged criminal activities and the implications for Diddy's career and personal life. The narrative shifted from a mere misconduct case to a potential investigation into serious crimes, raising the stakes dramatically. Inside the courtroom, the prosecution pressed on, emphasizing the importance of the evidence presented. They argued that the connections between the testimonies of housekeeper X and the tragic deaths of Kim Porter and Malia were undeniable. The jury was urged to consider the broader implications of the evidence, framing the trial not just as a legal battle but as a reckoning for the powerful figure who had long operated under the radar. The judge, aware of the mounting pressure, maintained a firm grip on the proceedings, ensuring that the focus remained on the facts rather than the sensationalism brewing outside. As the trial progressed, the emotional toll on the participants became evident. The jurors, initially stoic, began to show signs of fatigue and stress, grappling with the weight of the evidence and the moral implications of their decisions. The defense team, faced with the onslaught of compelling testimonies and physical evidence, struggled to counter the narrative effectively. Their objections, while valid, felt increasingly feeble in the face of the overwhelming support for the prosecution's claims. In the end, the Maid's testimony served as a catalyst for a deeper examination of Diddy's actions, igniting a conversation about accountability and justice in the entertainment industry. The courtroom had become a battleground for truth, and as the trial unfolded, the world watched closely, eager to see how the scales would tip. The fallout from this pivotal moment would resonate far beyond the walls of the courthouse, reshaping perceptions and challenging the status quo. As the final arguments were made, the audience was left to ponder the true cost of fame and the lengths to which some would go to protect their secrets. The truth, it seemed, was finally coming to light, and the consequences for all involved were poised to be monumental.